Well, as always, I'm always impressed by the synchronicity between things. The daily word reading was about creation, in a way, and that's kind of what I wanted to share some ideas about this morning, too, about creative breakthrough. It was kind of that was a creative breakthrough, too. Where did they come from? These discoveries, these new ideas, these creative ideas, those kind of Eureka moments. In some ways, it's a follow-up to last week. We were talking about how there's kind of a transmuting energy at work in our midst all the time that will take the experiences we've been through, even the things that seemed like mistakes and failures and losses, and will turn them to the good, turn them to higher purpose somehow. And it's kind of a creative activity of God that's going on in us all the time. And these ideas pop in mind all of a sudden, that I can do this with what I've learned in the past. I can do this with what I've experienced or the challenges I've faced. And that higher purpose kind of pops and becomes clear in us. But there's more to reflect on about that creative energy. Where does it come from? What's our part in it? How do we help make that happen? Do we make it happen at all? So a lot about creativity and creation and how that works. So here's the only little joke about creation I came up with in my reflection on this. God is talking to one of his angels, and he says, did you know what I've just done? I've just created this magnificent 24-hour period of alternating light and darkness on Earth. And the angel said, yeah, that's terrific. What are you going to do next? And God said, I think I'll call it a day. Creative process at work. What's our role in that? How do we make these? How do these new ideas pop in us? Or how creative breakthroughs, the Eureka experience? We've all had them, and it's interesting to reflect on what's involved in that and what's our role in that. The word Eureka, I took it for my title, it's an exclamation of triumph at a discovery. Eureka, we probably all know that, right? So it's also the sudden, unexpected realization of the solution to a problem. And the exclamation itself, Eureka, it's attributed to Archimedes of Syracuse. Did y'all know that? This was new to me. Archimedes came up with that first. He was a Greek mathematician, physicist, engineer, inventor, astronomer, and he was a confidant of the king. This goes back to 200 BC or something like that, way, way back. The situation where he said this word, Eureka, which would last forever, was he was asked by the king to look into the makeup of his crown. He had been given this gold crown, and he suspected it had been made of lesser metals, and that the difference in the value had been pocketed by the royal smith who made the crown, and that it wasn't all gold, but he'd sold off some of that gold and kept it and used silver or less expensive metal alloys in the crown. And so he asked Archimedes to evaluate the content of that gold crown, but without marring it or damaging it in any way, of course. So Archimedes works on this, he struggles, he studies, he reflects, but then apparently he's taken a break from his labors and he steps into his bath. It's a brim-full bathtub, according to legend. And he notices as he's getting in, the more of him gets in the water, the more water splashes out of the bathtub. The more he was immersed, the more the water overflowed. So the discovery came suddenly. To find the crown's volume, all he had to do was immerse the crown in a vessel full of water and measure the spillage. And he exclaimed, Eureka! And he was so excited, he ran out of his bath and into the streets of Syracuse, naked and dripping down the streets. That's the legend. That's the legend. According to something else I read, that it might have been a public bath, because in Greek city-states they used public baths instead of private bathrooms. And instead of being completely naked, he might have just been without his outer toga. because they used that word for that as well, to just be without your outer toga. So we don't know how naked he was or if this actually happened, but that's the legend. And the excitement was the Eureka, that discovery that came in an unexpected moment when he wasn't actually thinking about the problem anymore. There's some clues in that old legend about the Eureka experience that we all have in our lives, I think. Important discoveries that come to us, solutions to problems we've been working with, sudden realizations that wind up being turning points for us. We all have them. And I think we could all probably agree there was a little bit of that Archimedes experience in that we didn't engineer it, plot it, time it, make it happen. There was a lot more going on in our experience of these creative breakthroughs. So I thought I'd just start with an example of one of mine. Maybe it'll spark some reflections of one of yours in your life. Going through a time in my early 30s, I suppose, or mid-30s, time of great financial struggle, not having enough money to pay bills. I remember lately we've been hearing a contractor on the street driving up and down with a loud, loud muffler. And as I hear it, and I know everybody up the street is going, I hate that car, they're loud, and I think, I remember I went 2 years with a muffler like that. Because the muffler cost $250 at the time. It was like, gas bill, groceries, or muffler. What would your choice be? I remember that experience well, and I was really trying to make my writing support me at that time, trying to come up with ideas for writing projects that had some commercial appeal. Now, I thought I knew what that meant. It's not interesting looking back on that. So I tried all kinds of things. I did an ESL book, an English as a Second Language textbook at the time. I did a gift book about aging, the funny side of aging process. I don't know, with the other, I did a human interest column for quite a while in there, and trying to make all these things support me. While I was doing this kind of work, oddly, every once in a while, these ideas for spiritual articles would pop into mind, and I think, I don't have time for these things. I need something with more commercial appeal. And I'd set them aside, or I journal about it and say, I'll do that later. But every once in a while, I'd write something up, and I wrote up in a day, an afternoon, an article I wrote on the Lord's Prayer, which I've shared with all of you, I think, a rewrite on the Lord's Prayer, making it personal for me. And I sent it off to Unity Magazine. And a couple weeks later, and I was really in the grip of a lot of soul searching and struggle of thinking, why are these other ideas, coming to me for other things when I am needing support and supply? I'm needing to support myself. I need something, that's going to support me. And out of the blue, I got an acceptance letter from Unity Magazine. They were going to publish that article on the Lord's Prayer. And I sat down, and I remember crying. The words came to me very clearly. This is what you're meant to write, and this is your support. I had been separating them in my mind, and the Eureka was the bringing them together. This discovery, they're the same. It wound up being a turning point, one of those turning points, and there's a release of energy at a time like that, right? When you there's a kind of sense of clarity, something has come into better focus, and that brings new energy. Sometimes you give yourself permission to move in a new direction or more strongly in a certain direction because of that new clarity of purpose, that new energy. And it's a great encouragement from the universe when we have a moment like this, isn't it? There's this sense of validation somehow. I didn't make that happen. The hand of the universe was in that Eureka. And I think that God is at work in all our Eurekas, the creative breakthroughs. We can't take that much credit for them. But there are things we can do to kind of position or prepare ourselves to receive them. So I wanted to share some ideas about what that might be, and maybe spark some reflection for you as well. Because I think we find our way going through life. We learn about ways of how to cooperate, how to put ourselves in the flow, how to make ourselves a little more receptive, so that the Eurekas will come to us a little more readily, or at least that we won't be blocking them, which we can do sometimes when we get very in our heads. Would you agree? We can get so much in our heads, in our plotting and our planning, and thinking we're calling all the shots in our lives, that we are not perceiving the creative breakthrough that's trying to find us. So what works? What sparks creative breakthrough? I've come up with 5, I think, here that I've kind of learned over time that I think are help us if we are looking for answers or needing a new burst of energy or needing more clarity about why we're here and how we're meant to use our energies. Well, the first principle, it seems to me, about creative breakthrough is the one from Genesis, that the opening joke hinted at a little bit. I call it, let there be light. Let there be light. The Eureka experience seems to be more unconscious than conscious. We allow it to happen. We let it. We let there be light. We let there be guidance and direction. It's not something we force. It has its own timing, its own way. It's like the birth of anything. It takes its own time and way. We let it happen. We don't block it. To let it be means it suggests a process that's underway, that we're not controlling, but we're cooperating with and we're following with. So, as always, our artists, our poets, our artists are more in touch with these things, the creative process, than all of us. It's a wonderful quote from the poet Rilke. He says, everything in creation, everything is gestation and then bringing forth. Gestation, before birth, the gestation process, and then bringing forth. T.S. Eliot, another of my favorite poets, talks about the long incubation in creative work. Things simmer for a while. We don't control that simmering process and how long it takes in terms of coming up with a creative breakthrough, a new idea. The timing of the Eureka isn't ours. Emily Cady talks about this a good deal in her work. If you've never read Emily Cady, she's a wonderful, wonderful source in her complete works. She talks about the time of help coming to us is not our part, but God's. She says there is, and our role is and she struggles for words with it because our language is lacking in terms of this kind of receptivity, kind of active receptivity. She says there is such a thing as an indolent shifting of our responsibility to an outside God, which is laziness, and which never brings anything into manifestation. But there is also a state of trustful passivity into which we must enter to do the highest work. Elsewhere she calls it an active passivity. So we struggle for language sometimes in these deeper spiritual ideas. It's an active passivity. We're not doing nothing. It's not lazy indolence like, oh, God will take care of it and do, God will provide, No, it's like, it's waiting, like waiting on a birth that is underway. And you are trusting and knowing there's a higher power at work that's quite powerful and is going to bring it forth. Timing isn't up to you. Particular details in the manifestation aren't up to you. But you're trustfully waiting on a great power and presence that lives in you and all around you. That's not lazy. That's a kind of active awareness and receptivity. So let there be light. It suggests we don't force it. We don't push through on something because we're impatient or we're struggling. And we need an answer now. Anyone ever been there? We need an answer now, and I don't know, I'll try this. We do that, and that usually is not a way that works well. Never has been for me anyway. We have to sort of wait on that breakthrough to come, knowing it's going to come. We don't rush it, because rushing indicates ego involvement, I think, from my experience. Whenever I get into a sense of dire rush, it's got to be now, this muffler's got to be fixed, I've got bills to pay, I need an answer now. That often is sort of the preamble to rash decisions that aren't well thought out and I'm pushing, instead of waiting on the divine breakthrough to come through. So we wait with expectancy, like we know we're waiting on a considerable power that's within us, that we're connected to, that's always on our side. Jesus said it's the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. There's no withholding in God. We need to be ready and receptive and alert for the light to come. Let there be light. So that's principle one, is let it be. Second one is, while we're waiting, keep doing our skill building. our skill building. In that time of Eureka, that struggle, I was trying all kinds of things. I was certainly building skills. I remember writing out every day for hours. I remember sending out a lot of material to magazines and newspapers. All of that was skill building. It wasn't going to pay off in the way I thought it would at that time, but I was cultivating abilities and skills. I think that's something we're meant to do. While waiting for Eureka, we learn, we study, we encourage one another and ourselves. Sudden illumination, I don't think is quite as sudden as it looks. There's preparatory work, there's background that goes on, there's sensibility building. That's an idea I like. Oliver Sacks, I don't know if you've ever read any of Oliver Sacks. He wrote a book called Awakenings that was turned into a movie with Robin Williams. He was a neurologist and a psychologist, really fascinating man. He did a lot of writing about creativity, and he talks about how we study what we love, and as we study what we love, we develop our sensibility, our sense of our own minds, what we love, what's ours to do, what our gifts are. We build our sensibility. Margaret Mead talks about, she's an anthropologist, that we all have a tapestry of influences, mentors, spiritual guides and mentors we've all had. We gather information from all these different places as we build our sense of who we are and what's ours to do. Sachs says that that imitation precedes originality. I think it's true. Anyone who's an artist, does any kind of art, there's a stage in your growth as an artist where you're doing a lot of imitating of others, right? Early writers, often they're writing just like Hemingway. They're working at trying to sound like somebody they admire, and early work doesn't seem very original. That's part of the process. Imitation precedes originality by studying what you love, reading the authors you love, looking at the art you love, looking at how other people live. What do you love? What do you admire in how other people live that you see around you, in your mentors, in your gurus? I've always loved in Buddhism, there's a notion of the guru right beside you. That's a guru too, the one you bump into every day, the one you sit by at church, who has some kind of lesson or model for you that you can take to heart. That's how we build our creativity and prepare ourselves for breakthrough. We do our preparatory work. We learn, we study. We look around at what we love. We study what we love. We study what resonates with us and those around us, in the arts, in the world around us. So that's the second one. We do our preparatory work. We do our skill building. Third one, I call this, we open channels. We open channels through which that creative energy can reach us. And those channels can be different kinds of channels. They can be very direct channels. Jesus said, ask, and it will be given you. Knock, and the door will be open. Search, and you will find. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds, and for everyone who knocks, the door will be opened. A really, really direct statement of open the channel. Direct to God. I need help here. Has anyone ever prayed a prayer like that? It's a powerful prayer. You are really opening yourself up to divine influence. I'm kind of stuck here and looking for guidance. Send it to me so clear I can't miss it. That's a strong prayer to make, and you open yourself to that. I've known of inventor types who have asked questions just before bed and kept a journal by the bed, and then see what comes through in dreams and be ready to write it down. God responds to us. That's what Jesus was teaching there. The creative influence responds to us. The Creator responds to us because it's operating on our behalf to guide us in the path of life. So we can directly open a channel to God in us by our intention, by our words. And when I'm in real need, I like to say it out loud. God, help me. Guide me in this. I am in need of guidance, and I am waiting on your word. It's amazing what will come through, and the more we do it, the more quickly that response comes. I think of it's a fanciful idea. I've had, back when I was kid. Do you ever remember the Man from U.N.C.L.E. TV series?
Oh, sure.
It was one of my favorites when I was, I don't know how old I was, but loved that show. And I just loved that in times of trouble or confusion, they'd pull out that little communicator and go, open channel D. Open channel D, which would link them up to higher power and authority. And the guidance they needed, the protection would come. This is what you need to do to get out of this scrape, out of this tough spot. Do you remember Open Channel D?
Sure.
It's a great thing. All I think of that now, it's like direct line to the deity, D for deity, D for the divine, whatever you want to call it. But that's asking direct. If we are in a place of confusion, if we're a little lost, open Channel D, open it directly. Call upon God, ask, knock, door will be opened. But I think there are indirect ways of opening channels too, and I call this do something else. Archimedes was in the bathtub. Archimedes was taking a bath when the Eureka came. Einstein said his best ideas about physics and cosmology and so on came while he was taking his violin breaks. They came while playing the violin. He talked about when ideas click together in your mind. During these periods, he talked about it as combinatory play. It's a phrase I kind of like. Things coming together, combining. And they happened best for him when he was doing something else. Playing an instrument, doing music. Doing something else, it can be a very powerful way of stimulating the creative flow. It's a very powerful way of opening channels so creative ideas can flow through us. For a lot of people, I think physical activity really opens up channels so that you're more open to a creative flow. It could be anything, walking, running, doing yoga, playing sports, whatever it might be. If you're an artist, painting. If you're a writer, like me, journaling, it's a way of opening channels so that things come through that I didn't even know were going to come through, but when I start to write, it comes out. There was a study I was reading about online having to do with walking and creative ideas. And they had subjects and they gave them posed some problem and asked them to, in a limited time, come up with as many creative approaches to that problem as they could come up with. And the test groups were, one test group was like sedentary, they just sat there and tried to draft, and the other group was on a treadmill walking. And every time the group that was walking, doing something else besides just sitting and thinking, came up with more creative ideas. I think that's a really powerful thing to think about. Doing something else. Sometimes when we are struggling, in need of a solution, confused, needing greater clarity, we work it too hard. And we don't give ourselves permission to play or do something else entirely. We stay nose to grindstone, we stay focused until we work this darn thing out. But in fact, quite often, doing something else is going to be what brings it. Because we're going to be out of the way. Our minds are going to rest a little bit, or we're going to get some juices flowing, and then we might be ready for that Eureka to pop in mind. So do something else. Open channels. Do something else. Fourth one, say yes. I find this such a simple thing, but we are, if we're looking for a new idea, a solution, a creative idea, a breakthrough in some kind that's going to give us greater clarity, we have to be ready to say yes to new ideas that arise. And we human beings are not always good at doing that. If it's something we haven't thought of before or done before, we can be a little skeptical and even suspicious of a new idea, a new suggestion. We can develop a habit as we get older of kind of a knee-jerk reaction of no to a new idea that comes up. And knee-jerk no's is a way of blocking eurekas. Knee-jerk no's to invitation, opportunities, suggestions can be a way of blocking things, creative ideas, and not inviting in more. Our power to say yes, it's important. If this is a God-infused universe and God is always seeking to guide us, we need to be ready to say yes. And a lot more readily than no, because this could be the pathway to the breakthrough we've been looking for. There's a book out a friend mentioned to me, which I picked up because I like to say yes when things like that come along. Somebody suggested a book out of the blue. It's a book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Some of you might have read him before. But he decided to live with a, I'm going to say yes to everything, approach to life for a while. And he said yes to all kinds of things that he didn't want to do right off, or it didn't seem like it would be a good idea. But he had this policy, he was going to say yes to everything. And it brought amazing opportunities his way. One thing leads to another in life. And a lot of abundance came, a lot of opportunities arose as an answer to that, or a response to that simple change in policy. I'm not going to say no to things. Any new suggestion or idea that comes my way, I'm going to say yes to it. Do you think we could all do that? I think it might be a tough one, but if we can't say yes, at least we could say, let me consider that. That's a good start. If someone says, you know, I think you should do this, or I just read a book you might like, maybe we should go, let me consider that. Reflect on that. Keep the openness, that's the key thing. Keep ourselves open, keep the channels open so the creative breakthroughs can find us. When we say no, we shut down. We turn off and we shut down, and that could be blocking the very breakthrough we're looking for. So practice saying yes to life. And the fifth one is give thanks. Appreciation and gratitude fuel creation. And God saw that it was good. I love that. Throughout the Genesis creation stories, making that first day, separating the heavens, the sky from the ground, and separating the waters. At every step in creation, it ends with that God saw that it was good. It was good. It was good. I think that's a clue for all of us in our creative process, too, in our creative breakthroughs. Every little bit of guidance that comes, every little thing that works out, every tiny answer that comes, every little suggestion that finds you or invitation that comes your way, you give thanks for it. Give thanks for it. And as you do that, it stimulates the flow of more and more. Gratitude primes the pump of creative flow. Jesus gave thanks at every turn, before healing Lazarus, before breaking and distributing the loaves and fishes, which by legend fed 5,000. The teaching of that story is he gave thanks. He gave thanks as he broke the bread and distributed, and there were leftovers. There were leftovers after 5,000. It's a teaching about how it stimulates the flow of greater abundance in our lives. Giving thanks. Giving thanks. I think there is a lot we can do to open ourselves up to creative breakthrough, to Eureka experiences. No matter where we are or what we're going through, we know God is at work on our behalf, that we are deeply God-connected. So that creative energy is flowing, and our role is to be open to it, to be open channels, to give thanks for every little bit that comes, to be willing to say, ready to say yes to whatever that comes up, even if we don't quite understand yet how that's going to lead us in the right direction. Ready to say yes, receptive, ready to let it be, not forcing, not pushing, but ready to let it be. Some new ideas, these breakthroughs, this new step forward in life, this turning point, ready to take it, wide open to it. I let God lead me in the path of life. That's my affirmation for today. I'll say it once more and then you can join me. I let God lead me in the path of life. Together? I let God lead me in the path of life. Let's take that into prayer for a moment. How grateful we are to know we are God-connected beings and we do not have to make everything happen. God is leading us moment by moment, day by day. God is bringing us new ideas for how to live in a more fulfilled way, a more peaceful and joyful way. So we are wide open to divine influence. We are receptive, we are alert, we are awake, we are ready to receive and ready to follow God's guidance from within. And we are grateful. So it is. Amen.